Hey, 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 hey. Happy Friendship Friday. It is your favorite bestie, Giovanni G. I'm so glad that you're here to join this video today. We're going to learn about life not being over. As a caregiver, you can still travel, and we're going to get into it, right? So, make sure that you put comments in there, ask questions. I'm going to take time out at the end of the show to address any questions that you may have. Comment, like, share, and subscribe is free. It is free. Okay, so traveling is my love language. Anyone that knows me knows that that's my love language. And so when my mom health crisis happened, when it hit the fan, I thought that that part of my life was over, right? And how to travel with a wheelchair, getting on the plane, bathroom accommodations, and not to mention the excursions. Like, how would the excursions work? Like, what can I do? And where to start? How can I even master this thing and grab that piece of my life back, right? So you get up, you pack up, and you hit the high skies. That was your normal routine prior to being a caregiver. Like, you just booked your trip real quick and life is good, right? But once you become a caregiver, you have to regroup. Before, it might have been what shoes to pack. That was probably your only stressor. How many shoes to pack? How many outfits to take? And am I going to do two cosmetic bags or one? For the fellas, what are we packing linen or are we not packing linen, right? But once you become a caregiver, the shift happens. And so, but traveling with your disabled loved one is possible. It does take a lot of planning. It takes planning from the very beginning of booking all the way to execution. All begins with the booking process. All the hotels and cruises have wheelchair accommodations, right? But it caters to that accessibility, but it's limited. So they don't have that much in the inventory. And so you have to request that early on, right when you're booking your trip. It has to be requested. If not, it's a possibility that you won't be able to obtain it. Just like they only have limited handicap parking when you go to certain places. Um, when my mother had her stroke in September 2023, we had already had a cruise planned. And it was supposed to go out in December 2023. So once she got stabilized and everything like that, I immediately called the cruise line because I didn't buy insurance, right? Because I knew I was going on a cruise. I would do it for airlines, of course, to fly out the country. But for cruises, I was like, I'm going. I live in Georgia. It's not that far of a drive to get to Florida. I'm going. No way possible that I'm not going. So I didn't purchase the insurance package. So I immediately called the cruise line and I had to send proof in that she actually had a stroke, of course, within HIPAA, um, and get documentation from her doctor stating that she wouldn't be able to go, and etc. And they ended up moving my cruise. They allowed me to move my cruise 1 year out because in my mind, 1 year later, 15 months later, December 2024, she will be walking, she will be fine. This will be just a distant memory, right? But that is not the case. And now that our cruise is approaching, it's like, wow, like this is not what I thought it was going to be, but we're going to manage it. So I didn't know at the time that you had to request the room. Even though I showed the documentation that she's unable to walk and that she's in a wheelchair and the right side of her body is out and etc., I thought that was an automatic thing. And in June of 2024, I just was checking on our cruise to see where we were going and etc. And I was in the middle of getting my certification. Shameless plug, I am a travel agent, 3kgtravels.com. I'll put it in the comments for your travel needs. And so I was in the middle of taking my certification, and I was like, what's your accessible room? That's not automatic. So then I gave them a call, and they was like, oh, well, you didn't request that in the beginning when you moved your room, so you're not allowed to get on this ship. Wait, what? Why can't I get on the ship? Come to find out, the door sizes is not adequate for a wheelchair. The bathroom, if you ever been on a cruise, you know the bathroom is not set up for a wheelchair, and they have certain rooms that would accommodate those type of passengers. So I was like, oh, okay. So because I was a travel agent, I was able to find us another cruise for Christmas and not lose our money, right? Because if you didn't have, when I initially booked, I didn't have the insurance. So even though I purchased insurance to move it, I still would have had a loss because I didn't initially do that, right? And so I found us another cruise to go on, and we're headed out on a cruise. So that's amazing. But it still gives me a little anxiety because I know it's certain things that has to be planned out and in play. And so, what's that, 10 months, 9 months after her stroke, I took her to Greece. And when I tell you, we're going to get into how Greece was. So, you have to go into making sure that you have the accommodations from the beginning of your booking. You let them know if you need to bring proof or anything. Make sure you have the doctor's note just in case on your travels they may challenge it. They shouldn't, but just in case. I would rather you have it packed than not having it. And just making sure that you take all the precautions when it comes to when it comes to airplanes and trains. You also have to inform them of the wheelchair accommodations. With them, they require to ask for the weight of the wheelchair, the depth, and the height if you're bringing your own device, right? But if you're using theirs, it's not a problem. Or if you're renting one, and they have companies where you can rent for the cruise, you can rent for a plane, etc., or your international trip. But if you're bringing your own, they need to know all these things when you're booking your flight. And if your loved one is unable to walk at all, like my mother's situation, they have something on the airlines called a cabin chair. And a cabin chair is a two-person chair. It's a chair that your loved one sits in, but it takes two people to maneuver it down the aisle. It's a skinnier chair that goes down the aircraft aisle. The person is strapped in like a X strap, and then they're pushed down. Someone's in the front of the chair, someone's in the back of the chair. They get them down to their seat, and then they unsnap them and they do a transfer into the actual chair. When it comes to her having your loved one having to use the restroom on the plane, they have another type of chair to help with the bathroom part of it. And then they actually, on international planes, they can expand the bathroom. So they crank it up. It was really neat. They cranked it up on Air France and they made it bigger. So then I can go in there with her to assist her to pivot on the toilet and the things that she needed to do and help her get back into the smaller accommodating wheelchair for the airlines, right? And they also require the serial number. So each of your devices, the walker, the electric scooter, the electric wheelchair, the manual wheelchair, on the bottom of it, there will be a serial number somewhere. And the trains and the airlines require that in case it gets broken, it gets lost, they will know the value of it and they can replace it. Okay. And when it came to Air France and Delta, they actually give you a wheelchair tag. So it looks like a little license plate that you, or a luggage tag kind of, and it has her name on it or their name on it, and you bring it every time you fly, right? So you get this little thing that you attach to your wheelchair, and that way you can identify your wheelchair, right? And so make sure you immediately request that because you want to have the cabin chair requested. So they'll be waiting for you at the gate. Like they'll be waiting for you when you check in, that whole process. So you won't have to wait and possibly miss your plane, etc. So you make sure you do that first. Okay. And when you're packing the medications, I recommend overpacking. Like you may not think you need it, but just go ahead. Pack enough in case your plane gets delayed, it gets canceled. As we all know, with the travel situation, they don't have enough crew, so they'll just shut down the plane and you're stuck, and then you don't have that medication. And make sure that it's actually on your person. So it's in your purse, it's in your book bag, it's on your carry on bag, opposed to in your luggage packed because if they lose your luggage, you don't have the medication that you need. When it comes to like glucose and checking your for your diabetes, make sure all of those things, the lancet, the alcohol wipes, the actual test strips, all of those things are in your carry-on bag, your book bag, your pocketbook, in the carry-on bag. Again, in case it gets lost, most diabetics have to be checked multiple times throughout the day. And you may not be able to get your hands on it internationally, or you have to find a Walmart if you're local, and etc. If you don't have a car, that's Uber. It's just extra stress when you could have just packed it just in case you needed it. Most of the test strips come in 25. When I took her out of town for the first time, I took 50. Just in case something happened, they got water damaged. I had an unopened pack packed in there just in case, just so I won't be looking high and low trying to find the compatible test strips to her machine. So just take it with you. When it comes to make sure you also in that carry-on bag you have extra clothes in case there's an accident. Um, have Depends, have compression socks, have things that you think you may not need, but you just might need. Tylenol for pain, um, you name it, I had it packed. Take photos of your manual and your electric wheelchair or your scooter, your walker, with the serial number in the photo because you may need it for proof. I'm going to get into why this helped me, me not knowing that the group photo will help me. I'm going to get into why that helped. Overpacking the medical necessities in a carry-on bag will just bring you a peace of mind. It will give you less stress trying to find something. Luggage get lost all the time. Um, it is nothing for a plane to get shut down, but your luggage went to Atlanta and you in Miami. That is not uncommon. So to make sure you're not scrambling trying to find a UPS, I mean, oh goodness, a CVS, not a UPS, a CVS or a Walgreens, just make sure that you already have it. When it comes to the hotels, if you are type 1 diabetic or you have medicine that has to be refrigerated, make sure that your room has a miniature refrigerator. Make sure the refrigerator works. If the company will charge you, if that hotel will charge you, you need to know that at the beginning. Like I said, I'm a travel agent, so I have clients that are type 1 diabetic and they have to keep their insulin cold. And so I made sure that the hotel that they booked had a refrigerator in it because some hotels do not. And when you're packing your medication, the information that comes on your prescription, like it's a little pamphlet, little thing, and it says the name and all the side effects and all that. Just keep that if you're going out of town because it's going to be one top flight security that overdoes their job, that needs it or wants it or whatever. And I would rather you have it than you're battling with someone about having it. The little packs with the days of the week, I took it with me to distribute her medicine outside of once I got there. But in the travel, everything was in its original packaging with her name on it or whatever, because you don't want the whole one top cop saying you're trafficking drugs or how do we know this belonged to her or him and etc. So just keep it in original packaging and just take the travel packet where you can divvy up each day of the week. The medicines is normally Monday. I mean, it's Monday through Sunday, and it's normally morning, afternoon, and evening. And you drop the pills in each section. Take that with you, but take it empty. Do not have drugs in there because that could be a problem in the airport. We don't want any problems in the airport, okay? Especially if you're going international, you don't want any problems. And even if you're not sick and you're not a caregiver, this is just knowledge for your own self. This is the Need to Know series. And so this can even be used for yourself. So just make sure that you have all your drugs very clearly labeled in its original labeling, so you won't have no problems with TSA. We don't want no problems with TSA. Okay, understanding that the United States standards of wheelchair accessibility is not the world standards. That was the most culturing shock thing for me because I just assumed if they're saying wheelchair accessible, that's what they mean because that's what it means over here. That may not be so. Okay, the things I encountered internationally was a walk-in shower that was deemed wheelchair accessible with a shower chair in it, but it had a step up and step down into the shower. How are we getting a wheelchair in there? How are we putting a person in there who can't utilize the right side of their body? Sidewalks with a ramp to go down into the street, but it had a lip curb on it to prevent flooding. So you had to pop a wheelie over the curb with the wheelchair to get over the curb to get to the street to cross the street. Doorways too narrow, bathroom doors swinging out and swinging in. So we experienced where the door swung in, but the other door swung out. So the doors kind of touched each other. And that's kind of hard to maneuver if you're trying to push a wheelchair through. So those type of things. What else did we experience? Someone with mobility issues is a nightmare because we experience the grab bar not being in the wall. They were in the floor and they came up and they moved. That's a nightmare if a person has a mobility issue and you have to be able to adapt. So for the week, I was my mother's grab bar, which was interesting. Like I had to do a stance, make sure I can be able to brace myself to be able to help her get up and down onto the toilet. Okay. So our ideal of wheelchair accessibility is not the world's ideal of wheelchair accessibility. Okay. I took my mom with me in the end of May to June for a week to Greece and London for the day. And when I tell you Murphy Law, anything you could imagine went wrong on this trip. But because I'm a travel agent, it actually was a teachable moment for me to be able to know how to sell disabled travel and be able to help people that want to travel that have mobility issues because I learned so much. It was really baptismal by fire. Anything you can think went wrong, went wrong. Now, when we left the United States, we were on Delta, all was well. It was beautiful. Okay. It was amazing. They had our little tag on, they had the cabin chair, our wheelchair arrived. Everything was top notch, amazing. But when we got to Europe, it got real. Like it really got real. The restroom layout was not ideal for a wheelchair, even though they sold me a wheelchair accessible room. Okay. There was no grab bars in our hotel room in Greece. There was no grab bar in the shower. As I explained, it was a lip, like some steps. It was like one step and you stepped over. So you had to step up and step down to get into the glass shower. Beautiful shower. Mind you, this was a 4-star hotel. I'm not going to say their name. But yeah, it was interesting. So the first night, of course, me and my kid team tagged and got her in the shower. It was a struggle. We had to both lift her over the step, get her to the shower chair, and somebody got in the shower and showered her. Oh, it was crazy because it was all glass shower. The rest of the trip for the rest of the week, we was doing straight military wash-ups. We was hitting all because it was just too much to try to move her into the shower space, especially with the chair with the step there because her legs had to hang out of the shower because we couldn't put them all the way in because we wouldn't be able to get her out, right? Because the wheelchair couldn't go into the shower because of that step. And so that was rough. That was the first night. That was really rough. But after that, we adapted. Like I said, I had to be her grab bar. So at first, when I got into and most of European toilets are lower than ours, but they also have a bidet, which is great. So that was helpful. The bidet, we just sprayed her up. That was good. But her getting low sometimes was an issue. And sometimes my daughter had to help me get her off the commode. So that was quite interesting. And then we did a day trip to London, right? And we took a group picture because I had a group every year. I do a group trip. We go somewhere. And so my group was amazing because the year before we went to Dubai. And so a lot of those people were on this trip. So they already knew my mom because my mom, that was 3 months before her stroke. So she was on a camel then. Everything was great. She chilled with people. So everybody knew her. So everybody helped me. And I'm forever grateful and thankful. They made the process so much easier for me because it was very difficult, right? So when we got to London for the day, we checked her in, we did the cabin chair, we took a group photo, just me just taking a group photo. I had already took the serial number picture because I needed it for Delta. I took the picture of it so I can zoom in and read them the numbers. So I already had that. And we took this group photo right before we got on the plane to go to London. When we got to London, they lost a wheelchair. Yeah. So someone that cannot walk had no wheelchair. So it was insane. The airline we had didn't really care. They told me to file a complaint online, which was crazy. So my American self showed all the way out. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. And finally, the transporter company, the company that comes pick up people with the wheelchairs and help get them off the plane, they found me, they were giving the most help. And they found me a wheelchair that had duct tape on it and was on his last leg. But we had to get around London. We was only there for 24 hours. And so we toured London and everything like that. But I didn't pack properly. I saw the temperature, but I didn't know it was going to be rainy and cold, and so we had to stop and get her a hoodie to make that work. We had to get a poncho because she's in a wheelchair. I had packed umbrellas, but I did pack a poncho, but I had to find the poncho. Didn't know where it was at. It was in my check. It was in my pack luggage and not my check bag. But my umbrellas was in my check bag. Go figure. Um, so we had to deal with that. We had to deal with cabs not stopping for us because the black cabs in London have a wheelchair ramp on us, but some people didn't want to deal with that, so they would just pass us by. But a lady ended up stopping. She was amazing. Come to find out, her mom had had a stroke months prior, so she knew what it was like maneuvering a parent in a wheelchair. So she helped us and gave us a tour because that night before, when we arrived, we spent 3 hours in the airport looking for a wheelchair. Come to find out, the wheelchair was back in Greece. And when we got back to Greece the next day, they couldn't locate it again. I acted a whole fool. And then finally, miraculously, they found it. So because I had that picture, the serial number, and I had a picture of the Delta tag, was able to zoom in a group picture that was able to help us locate this wheelchair, right? And we also, once we did with that, we finally went back to our hotel, exhausted, stressed out. The very next day, we went on a day cruise in Greece. And that day cruise told me it was wheelchair accessible. So I paid extra money. And their ideal for wheelchair accessible was two people on each side of my mother's wheelchair lifting her onto the cruise ship. Wait, what? Wait, what? The ramp wasn't working. Oh, it was insane. So to get her on and off the ship when we stopped at the three different islands, that's how they got her on and off the ship. So yeah, that was a little insane. And then we went to Santa Terrini for the day. And that was beyond crazy as well because most of the planes you have to walk outside to get on the plane. So it was really neat because they put us in this truck thing and it raised up in the air and it drove us to the airplane and we got right on where everybody had to walk out on the tarmac and climb up the steps. It was kind of crazy. Like, what, Greece? What are we doing? So that was kind of interesting. But when we got to Santa Serena, we went to a restaurant and I used Google University. As I said before, that's my help. And they said it was a wheelchair accessible restaurant. So I'm like, okay, cool. But Santa Serena is all built into the rocks and cliffs and etc. And so it was a cliff top restaurant. It was down into like a sunken restaurant into the rocks. And it had like 4 steps to get down into the sunken area. And again, 4 men lifted my mother in her wheelchair and got her down into the sunken restaurant. And I was like, well, this is not really wheelchair accessible. Yeah, that was not ideal. So Santa Serena was a lot of hills and rocks. So it wasn't really wheelchair accessible at all because you had to push someone up in a wheelchair straight uphill. And so being adaptive and being flexible and understanding that you got to kind of go with the punches and laugh to stop from crying, just so you can get through the moment and just planning. You plan everything out, things you think you may not need. You go ahead and take it just in case because you rather have it than get on the ground and you got to try to search and find it, right? And so it was quite interesting. Our bathroom in London, it was not wheelchair accessible by far at all. It was so bad so that my kid and myself had to walk my mother into the bathroom, like literally give her steps to get to the bathroom because the wheelchair just could not fit in there. So it was definitely a culture shock. And that was actually a Hampton Inn. I can give the name of that. It was actually a Hampton Inn. So I was just like, wait, this is the American business and this is happening. This is beyond insane. So just making sure you're flexible and you understand that it may go left. Murphy Law, what can go wrong will go wrong. just understanding that part. I'm hopeful that our cruise in December will be better. We do have a wheelchair accessible room. I've seen, because I have certifications in different things, I've seen wheelchair accessible rooms on cruises. So it's bigger, the door is wider, the bathroom is a roll-in shower, and it has a bench that comes out the wall, and it has a sprayer. So but they go fast. It's probably like maybe 8 or 10 on each floor. Those cruise ships are huge, so you're looking like maybe 20, 40 wheelchair accessible rooms. It's not a high percentage of wheelchair accessible rooms, which is interesting. You would think it would be, but it's not. And they go fast. So just make sure you reserve that way before the time. And all of these things that I'm teaching you tonight is for if you're taking your loved one on an international trip, or you're taking your loved one on a cruise ship. If, of course, if you're going locally, this wouldn't really, it would kind of apply. You still need the wheelchair accessible hotel or resort or condo, Airbnb. You still need to make sure it's access for the wheelchair to get in there. Airbnb also has a click filter where you can check that. You definitely would need the vehicle. When we experienced in Greece and London, well, not London, but Greece, I had rented a Sprinter for the week because it was a smaller group, and not even thinking about it because I rented a Sprinter before in Paris with my group. And so I didn't even think about that it's 3 or 4 steps to get in the Sprinter. And I was like, wait. So my group helped me. Like literally, somebody moved one leg, somebody was in the front of my mother, somebody was in the back of my mother. I'm moving the actual leg up the steps to mechanically get her on the Sprinter to go where we need to go for the tours and everything like that, because I didn't even think about that part. I was just like, oh, the Sprinter is big enough, we can put the wheelchair in there. I didn't think about how she can get on and off, right? And because I have an SUV, she's able to stand up, hold herself on the bar of the SUV and pivot and sit in a chair. But that's not the case um for a Mercedes Sprinter. That's not always the case. It normally has steps. A minivan has a step up. So you just got to keep that in mind. Now, one perk we did have, we went to Buckingham Palace. And because she was in a wheelchair, we sat right there in front of the palace. Like they had a wheelchair section, and we was able to sit right there in front and see them do the change in the guard. So that was cool. That was a nice little perk. We was able to get in the front. A lot of people were accommodating because she was in a wheelchair. But yeah. And when we got back to Greece to get our chair, that actual chair fell apart. So it was like God definitely was with us to keep her safe the 24 hours. The duct tape had all fell apart. The chair totally collapsed. And it didn't do it until we flew back to Greece and we were at another airport. So once we got back to the Athens airport, that's when it all fell apart. But she wasn't in the chair. They brought the chair up and it just totally fell apart. As soon as they opened it up, it totally fell apart. So it did us enough for us to see London, but not. So what I learned in the process is make sure you overplan. Make sure you don't use the rinky-dink airlines because they may lose your wheelchair. Because I used European Airlines thinking it's airline. These trips is only 2 hours. What could go wrong in 2 hours? A lot. A lost wheelchair can go wrong in 2 hours. So yeah. So just make sure you overplan. You pack things that you may not think you need, but you're going to need them. If you're going for a week to a destination and your loved one used Depends, pack 2 weeks worth of Depends just in case. 3 weeks if you want to, just in case something goes left. Um, just make sure you have different things. Make sure you have anti-diarrhea medicine. Make sure you have Miralax just in case they can't go because of the cultural difference of the foods. Just whatever you think you may not need, just gonna pack that. It ain't gonna hurt you to pack that, right? So life is not over. You can travel as a caregiver. You can take your loved one with you. If you choose not to, they have respite care. You can have one of your family members fly in to watch that person for you. They have home health aides. I'm a little nervous about that because it's someone else in my house and I'm all the way out the country and I don't know what you're doing in my house. So I definitely will use a family member or take her to a facility that does respite care, which will let you do vacations and you pay the money and they will give them the medicine and feed them and all of that for the week or 2 weeks, however long you're going. And so, yeah, life is not over. You can travel with your loved one, or you can just leave them back and just have them entrusted with someone that's going to take good care of them. So, thank you so much for giving me your time tonight. I am always grateful and thankful that you are watching and learning from me. I've done all the heavy lifting for you, your favorite bestie. I hope to see you next week, where we're going to talk about home assessments. If you can't afford to take your parents or your loved one to an assisted living, because that is an out of pocket cost. That's in the Get Ready series. Make sure that you have a home assessment to know what you need to do for your home to get ready for your loved one. Good night and thank you for joining. Bye. See you next week.